Your daily headlines powered by AI and reviewed by people you can trust. This is Neural Newscast.
From our digital news hub, this is Andrew Lindbeck. It's Wednesday, August 27th, 2025. Here are today's top stories. Political shifts and debates ahead. Top CDC leaders resign after the director was pushed out, signaling deep tensions over public health and politics. Here's Cassandra Joyce with more.
Multiple top CDC officials resign after Director Susan Menares is pushed out less than a month into the job. On Wednesday, Dr. Dimitri Daskalakis, who leads the National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases, steps down, citing weaponization of public health. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Deebu Ari also resigns, saying ongoing changes hinder her leadership and that science should not be censored. Their statements reflect one perspective in a broader debate over science and politics. Supporters of the shakeup argue accountability and policy alignment are necessary. Critics warn politicization risks public trust and emergency readiness under President Donald Trump.
President Trump holds a Gaza policy meeting with Tony Blair and Jared Kushner to discuss post-war governance and security. Here's Daniel Grove with more.
President Donald Trump convenes a Gaza policy meeting at the White House with former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair and senior advisor Jared Kushner. The session focuses on post-war governance and security as Israel faces scrutiny over hospital strikes and civilian tolls. Participants discuss reconstruction, security guarantees, and roles for regional partners. Supporters say engaging Blair and Kushner offers continuity and diplomatic reach. Critics argue Kushner's past peace efforts favored one side and urge broader Palestinian representation. These are competing perspectives in an ongoing debate over how to stabilize Gaza and prevent renewed conflict.
NATO allies plan to spend over $1.5 trillion on defense this year in a bid to deter Russia and boost weapons production. Here's Monica Kellen with more.
NATO allies plan to spend more than $1.5 trillion on defense in 2025, the alliance estimates. Leaders say higher budgets deter Russia and speed weapons production. President Donald Trump presses members to meet or exceed the 2% of GDP target, a long-standing benchmark. Supporters call the buildup overdue after years of underinvestment. Critics warn that rapid increases risk waste, strain social budgets, and escalate tensions. Those concerns reflect one perspective in an ongoing debate over Europe's security and burden sharing with the United States. This is Monica Kellen for Neural Newscast.
A global perspective on today's events. Iran has agreed to let UN nuclear inspectors return after a month-long ban, easing immediate tensions over its program. Here's Sarah Wheaton with more.
Iran allows UN nuclear inspectors to return after a month-long ban that alarmed world powers. The decision restores access for the International Atomic Energy Agency to key sites in Iran. Tehran halted cooperation last month, raising fears it might restart work toward a nuclear weapon. Inspectors now resume verification of uranium enrichment levels and centrifuge operations. The move lowers immediate tensions but leaves core disputes unresolved. Iran's stockpile and enrichment up to 60% remain central concerns. The IAEA says access is essential to verify compliance and monitor any further nuclear advances.
Israeli forces pound Gaza City, forcing thousands to flee as hospitals strain under mounting casualties and scarce fuel. Here's Monica Kellen with more.
Israeli tanks push into Gaza City as heavy airstrikes pound northern neighborhoods, forcing mass flight. Thousands stream south on foot and in cars, carrying children in bags, as explosions hit areas like Zaytown, now reduced to rubble. The Israeli military renews evacuation orders and calls leaving the city inevitable. Health officials in Gaza report mounting casualties, with hospitals strained and fuel scarce. The United States hosts talks on post-war governance while fighting intensifies. Aid groups warn of worsening humanitarian conditions as corridors open and close amid the assault.
European leaders travel to Moldova to boost its EU bid and signal unity against Russian pressure ahead of a key election.
You are listening to NNC, Neural Newscast. Online at neuralnewscast.com.
Here's Daniel Grove with more.
European leaders rally behind Moldova's push to join the European Union as a pivotal election nears. The leaders of France, Germany, and Poland travel to Chisinau to signal unity against what they call relentless Russian pressure. They meet President Maya Sandu and pledge support for reforms, security, and energy resilience. The visit comes weeks before Moldova's vote that could shape its European path. Officials frame accession talks as a shield for stability, saying the country belongs in Europe.
Denmark has apologized to Greenlandic women forced to undergo contraception decades ago, promising compensation and records access. Here's Laura Navarro with more.
Denmark issues a formal apology to Greenlandic women subjected to forced contraception decades ago. Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen says the state failed them and promises redress. From the 1960s into the 1970s, thousands of Inuit girls and women receive intrauterine devices, sometimes without consent. Many are minors. The program aims to curb births in Greenland during Danish administration. Survivors report pain, infertility, and trauma. Frederiksen calls it deeply unfair and vows compensation and access to records, signaling a broader reckoning with colonial-era abuses. This is Laura Navarro for Neural Newscast.
A look at jobs, markets, and money. A new 50% U.S. tariff on Indian imports takes effect, threatening higher costs for goods and possible retaliation from India. Here's Ethan Wells with more.
A new 50% U.S. tariff on Indian imports now takes effect nationwide. President Donald Trump raised the levy from 25% to 50% this month by executive order, citing India's purchases of Russian oil. The move targets a broad range of goods, with textiles, apparel, steel, aluminum, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, auto parts, and electronics expected to feel the sharpest pinch. Importers face immediate cost spikes, and consumers could see higher prices later this year. India may respond with its own measures, raising risks for bilateral trade and supply chains. Trump says the step protects American industry.
Nvidia posts strong sales as demand for its AI chips remains intense, driven by data centers and cloud providers. Here's Jason Miller with more.
Nvidia reports another surge in sales as demand for its AI chips remains intense. The company, now the world's most valuable publicly traded firm, says orders stay strong this quarter. Data centers drive growth as cloud providers and enterprises race to deploy generative AI. Nvidia's H100 and newer B200 processors remain in short supply. Investors watch for guidance on margins and capacity expansion. CEO Jensen Huang says the build-out of AI factories is accelerating, signaling continued heavy spending across the tech industry. This is Jason Miller for Neural Newscast.
Stories from the frontiers of knowledge. Scientists released the most detailed image of a solar flare ever captured, shedding light on magnetic structures driving eruptions. Here's Nathaniel Cohen with more.
Scientists released the most detailed image of a solar flare ever captured, revealing ultra-fine magnetic structures on the sun. The photo comes from the Daniel K. Inouye Solar Telescope on Haleakala, Maui, the world's most powerful solar telescope. It shows coronal loops and thread-like plasma strands only a few dozen miles wide. Researchers say the view helps explain how magnetic fields drive eruptions that can disrupt satellites and power grids on Earth. One scientist calls it a landmark moment for solar physics. This is Nathaniel Cohen for Neural Newscast.
Sports stories making headlines. Women's professional baseball holds final tryouts at Nationals Park, marking a major step for the sport's revival. Here's Thomas Golding with more.
Women's professional baseball takes a major step as the new Women's Professional Baseball League holds final tryouts at Nationals Park in Washington, D.C. on Monday. More than 600 players from 10 countries report, with the field cut to just over 100 for scrimmages. Former U.S. World Cup silver medalist Alex Hugo leads evaluations, saying the open format seeks anybody we might have missed. The league is the first since the AAGPBL folded in the early 1950s. This is Thomas Golding for Neural Newscast.
For the latest, we check in with our breaking news team. Witnesses described chaos after violence erupted at a hospital and nearby school, with families urged to reunite at designated centers. Here's Sarah Wheaton with more.
Witnesses described chaos at a city hospital and a nearby school after a sudden eruption of violence. Parents rush to the campus as ambulances crowd the emergency bay. Nurses treat dozens for cuts, shock, and smoke inhalation. Teachers shelter students in classrooms while police secure the grounds. Officials urge families to reunite at a designated center and keep phone lines clear. One mother says, "We just want our kids safe." This is Sarah Wheaton for Neural Newscast.
Now let's share the latest from abroad. Denmark outlines next steps after its apology to Greenland's forced contraception victims, including access to records and a compensation plan. Here's Laura Navarro with more.
Following Denmark's formal apology, officials detail next steps for Greenlandic women subjected to forced contraception decades ago. Copenhagen says survivors will receive full access to personal medical records and a government-managed claims process for compensation. Advocates urge an independent inquiry and long-term trauma support. Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen calls the effort a reckoning with colonial-era abuses, while rights groups press for timelines and community oversight. This is Laura Navarro for Neural Newscast.
Continuing with more top stories. That concludes our roundup. For extended coverage and updates, stay with Neural Newscast and visit our website. Thanks for tuning in to Neural Newscast. For full stories and breaking updates, visit neuralnewscast.com and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. I'm Andrew Lindbeck. Until next time.
From daily summaries to deep storytelling, Neural Newscast keeps you informed. Visit neuralnewscast.com for more ways to listen and explore. Neural Newscast fuses real and AI-generated voices for fast, quality news. AI creates, humans review. We aim for accuracy, but errors can happen. Verify key details. Learn more at nnewscast.com.